Doot 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 boop. Beep boop 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 boop. Hello everyone. Just kidding. Yo, what's up? Guns and Funds here. Just gonna talk through some Shadowlands lore today. This is really the first X pack that I really got into the lore, so shout out to guys like Novel87 and Akalon and Bellular and whoever the Fire Pyromaniac or whatever the hell his name is, who talk about this shit all the time, and it's really awesome. And there's so much to dive into with Shadowlands. So without further ado, here's what I think. All speculation. I don't know. Just trying to put clues together, listening to these guys, reading Wowhead, playing the game, of course. And here's what I think is going to come up. I wanted to get this out before BlizzCon Live on the 19th, so we'll see if any of it gets confirmed. Let's dive in. All right, and because I love you, I won't tease you and save it to the end. We're going to start off with a biggie here. Who or what is Azeroth, I think, and why are all the cosmic forces like battling and trying to get Azeroth? I think that Azeroth is the Titan of hope. You know, when you look at all the other Titans, they represent things that kind of bring order to reality. Things like life, time, you look at the builders who build the earth and that kind of shit. And Azeroth, I do believe, is the Titan of hope. And I'm just going to go over a quick subtle clues of why I think that is. And then throughout the video, they'll be weaved in kind of more and more in-depthly that I think will kind of point out why that is. So first, let's jump back to this here, Saurfang. So this is right about when he's about to get got by Sylvanas, and he says, "You cannot kill hope." And this is a recurring theme. I don't think, I'm sure the writers at Blizzard come up with more words to use, but they say hope over and over and over and over again. And right after he says you can't kill hope, he turns and hits Sylvanas and he says, "For Azeroth." So he's saying he's fighting for hope. I mean, I think that's a subtle clue hiding in plain sight. And, like I said, we'll go through much more. That's not all the evidence. We'll talk about it a lot more. But before we do that, let's jump into some foundational history so we can kind of talk about why hope is important and why the void and death kind of are fighting to, I guess, consume it. Okay, so if you've ever watched any lore video ever or care about the lore, you've seen this cosmology chart. If you've never seen this before, just put it in YouTube or Google. There's people who go very much in depth about it, and I don't want to do that here. But essentially, these are all the cosmic forces that make up the World of Warcraft universe, and they're all kind of in balance with each other. The notion of every action has an equal and opposite reaction. At first when the universe started, you had light, but when you have light, you need to have darkness, right, to balance that out. And then you get life, and when you have life, you need to have death to balance that out. When you have order, you need to have disorder. These are the things that kind of all these cosmic forces, they're not like good or evil, or I don't even believe necessarily sentient at their most elemental, but it's what you do just by nature is try to gain the more control and kind of shift the scales to your side. Primordial cosmic forces may not be sentient, like the beings that spring from them are. Like the Naru is a being of light, and we can interact with them, and they exist in reality. And like pure light and pure void don't exist in our reality. So, with understanding that, let's look at where death and the void kind of overlap in their sentient reality-based existences. Here's a little excerpt from Enemy Infiltration, the book that is found in Revendreth, and it talks about how the Void Lords are welcoming the agents of death with open arms, kind of saying that, to me, they have very similar overlapping goals. So they're cool to like work together, for the time being, while they can kind of trash or consume what's so opposite to them, which is life and the light and things that stem from that side of the cosmology chart. So here is a like Wowipedia or something excerpt about the void, also known as shadow, and it says shadow is the opposite of light. It brings out feelings of despair and panic. In a poetic sense, it can be said that light brings out things from the heart, like courage and hope, and the shadow kind of attacks the mind and brings out things of despair. And that's when you see someone be corrupted by the void, it's because they have their feelings of paranoia and fear take over. You see this in Bastion with their ascendants, or their whatever little trainee guys. I mean, that's like really all that is happening. They're scared to let go of their memories, and it manifests in this dark void eaten thing. We also saw it in Pandaria with those shahs of fear and shit. Like people, their fears were manifesting. And if you're like, this is supposed to be about death, not the void, shut up. Well, look at what the jailer is missing. His heart. He has, he's missing the main thing, the main symbolic element that represent any positivity. So of course he's not about that life. He's trying to wipe hope and courage out and all that sort of thing. So the Void says, let me take a crack at this, Death. We're on the same team. We're on Azeroth. We'll get hope. Yogg-Saron, bam. His plan, the Curse of Flesh. He's going to take all these Titan forged things and make them weak. And if you look in the article here, it says that he did this to make them, to facilitate assimilation. He wanted the Curse of Flesh so he could more easily corrupt humans. But he made a little boo-boo, because while it did make humans more susceptible to corruption, it also gave them courage and hope, the very things that bring mortal groups together to overcome and defeat great obstacles. So why do humans and the allied races and the living beings of Azeroth keep thwarting all these, cosmic forces? Because of these other things. And, so instead of assimilating and being just so corrupted by fear and all those negative things, this is why, another reason why I believe Azeroth is the Titan of Hope. They are soaking up that hope, that fight, that courage to keep going. They're never defeated. They always have hope. So the Void fails. Yogg-Saron, man, we whooped that ass. All the other old guys beat them. Done. So now Death says, all right, you guys suck. Let us step in. We'll hook it up. So Death has a bunch of plans. I'm just going to talk about one. I'm not going to talk about Sargeras or anything. I'm going to talk about the Lich King, the most obvious thing, very closely tied to Shadowlands here. So even when you look back at this scene from beating Arthas, look what he says. He says, now I stand the lion before the lambs, and they do not fear. So, he was supposed to be imposing. He was supposed to crush their hope. They should have succumbed to him and his influence, and Azeroth should have fallen to the Lich King, and by virtue of that, death, because the Lich King is an agent of death. But it doesn't happen, again, we are hopeful, and we step in and we beat the Lich King. Now, how do we do it? Well, because the light steps in. We're on the verge of losing, and light comes in and, revives us and gives us power, and then, hasta lasagna, dude, Lich King is dead. And not only does the light hook us up, but, it says like the light gives us hope and courage, similar to the powers of Azeroth, but it also says here that these positive energies reside in every living being, in their heart and in their soul. Soul, that's going to be important. And ultimately, as we know, the Lich King fails, we sent him packing, and now, shit. The Void and the Death say, you know what, fuck it, we gotta team up because we both failed and we suck and we're losers. So they put this plan in action. Step one, we gotta break the Arbiter. And to know why that's important, let's look back. Here's a shot from Afterlife's Bastion, where Devos is saying, the fucking Lich King is running around on a mortal plane, wielding the power of the Maw itself. Now, what is the power of the Maw? Well, let's take a look at some quests from the Maw, and they kind of flat out tell us. Okay, so right here, Jaina is saying, I was beginning to lose hope. There it is, hope, again. So in the Maw steals hope away from your soul. Okay? So they couldn't kill hope on Azeroth because Azeroth is hope. So they said, we got to get these souls down here. Remember, now hope and all these things from the light are in their soul. So they say, no. We got to stop that. Otherwise, if these souls just keep, you know, going through Oribos and giving anima and yada yada, we're fucked. We're never going to get out of here. We're stuck. So we got to break the Arbiter and get these souls down to the Maw and get rid of their hope. So here it is, Sylvanas from Warbringers. Whoever it is, somebody Moon, Summer Moon or something, says you can kill us, but you can't kill hope. Again, hope. Sylvanas says, can't I? And what does she do? She burns Teldrassil. Now, yes, I am saying that I believe that the burning of Teldrassil is what broke the Arbiter. Now look at this. This is the YouTube CC. People screaming in death. These are not souls that have hope. These, I mean, they say it right before it in Warbringers, like, you can't kill hope. And she's like, well, watch me. And I think literally these souls that burned in Teldrassil are devoid of hope. You know, it's not like dying in a battlefield. They say this in the Warbringers too. Like, this isn't war, this is hatred. You know, when you look at like Maldraxxus, it's all about war and warriors. They talk about glorious battle. Like, these are fighters that have hope. And then, you know, regular people that die, what happens? You know, they have somebody from Bastion come and hold their hand and give them an orange slice and say, let's go, come on, onto the Shadowlands, you're a good boy. And it's all good. And that's why when the Arbiter typically sees a soul, it's a very pleasant process. And the Arbiter, it says, experience all that shapes the soul. But not when they die like they did in Teldrassil. They come in hot, pun intended, like this. And they comes in and the Arbiter just isn't used to this. That's not what the Arbiter is built for. And, you know, these souls are devoid of hope, so they're rocketing right to the Maw, right, where their hope doesn't exist. It causes the Arbiter to shriek, according to the YouTube closed captions. And, you know, I think that's important because it mirrors the scream, if you watch the YouTube video, well, that we saw, I probably left it on for way too long, where it says people screaming in death or whatever in Teldrassil. And I think those two are two parallels, you know, two literary narrative devices or whatever to show that those two things are connected. And, you know, like, why is it important to break the Arbiter? Why do we want souls in the Maw? Like, in the Maw, who gives a shit, right? Well, because a soul in the Maw without hope, as this nice little demonstration points out, they manifest as malevolent shades wandering the darkness. You know, they're no longer producing anima for the Shadowlands. They're not keeping the jailer imprisoned. They are wallowing in torment. And so that's why you want the souls to go right to the Maw and not to Oribos and through the Arbiter. So now that step one's out of the way, now they gotta break the veil. And I don't know exactly why the Helm of Domination breaks the veil. I think it's probably something to do with, you know, it's a representation of death that tethers death to the world of life. And so it would almost be like throwing a anchor into another boat, and then when you rip that boat out, it's going to do some fucking damage, right? And kind of leave a path of destruction behind it. And I think maybe that might be a little loose. I don't know, but, you know, I could see it's one of the things that kind of yada yada, in my opinion. Maybe they'll explain it, but that's the best I got so far. And why is that important? Because, you know, both the Void and Death have shown that they can't win when fighting on Azeroth. On Hope's home turf, they cannot win. They need to bring the fight to their home turf, to the afterlife, in this case. And, you know, I know the Shadowlands is death, so you're saying, well, what about the Void? What the hell? I thought you said this was a joint plan. Well, here's where the Void comes in. Dude, Sylvanas' powers are 100% Void powers. Like, Blizzard uses colors very distinctly and very purposefully. I mean, look at that. It's purple. These are Void magics, I can guarantee it. So here's another shot of her when she fucking wastes Saurfang. And now let's look at that next to her sister Illyria, who we know is like Void, whatever, corrupted, or she wields the Void to, you know, to be a weapon of the Void. Looks pretty similar to me. I think, you know, I think Sylvanas gets her strength and the strength to bank the Helm of Domination from the Void. Now, how does the Void and Sylvanas get together? Well, I would guess that when Sylvanas jumps off of Ice Crown onto the Saronite spikes below in an attempt to, like, obliterate her soul, you know, the Saronite spikes, that is the blood of Yogg-Saron. And I think that when she goes into, what is it, Edge of Night or fucking whatever the novel's called, like, I believe that she's not in the Maw there. I think she's in the Void realm when she dies. And that could be wrong. I don't know. I know those Valkyrie bring her back and yada yada, but in the novel they kind of go through all the emotions she's feeling in this kind of weird post-afterlife, and they say her life felt like a pinpoint in a giant void, in an endless void, and they say her emotions are fear, horror, regret, kind of all these things that when we looked at the Void Wowpedia entry at the beginning of this thing, those are all the emotions that are, you know, associated with the Void when they want to corrupt somebody. So I don't know, I think it stands to reason that she gets a little Void infused, a little Void infusion there, a little shot in the ass from the Void. Okay, so now Sylvanas, she goes and has her Valkyrie or whatever fucking take all the leaders from Azeroth and bring them to the Maw. Now why does she do that? And you know, I think here's a screenshot from that intro quest, and Thrall is, you know, regaling us with his tales, and he's saying, "Oh, we've faced countless horrors and torments, and it felt like we were being tested for something, but we're not sure for what." And then I think at the end of the quest they answer that in a pretty subtle way. So the jailer says, you know, like, yield to the inevitable. Now, yield to the inevitable is literally the same thing as saying, you know, just give up hope, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. And what happens? Let's check out and see what our heroes do. Bane and Jaina, yep, they don't seem like they have much hope there. Checking on our boy Thrall. Ooh, no, he is wrapped up in shit. But Anduin calls down hope. He calls down the light, the power of the light, to protect them. And that's, of course, we know why the jailer and Sylvanas are so interested in him, but I don't necessarily think that it's for the reasons to turn him into the next Lich King or whatever. And I'll talk about the reasons why I think that interests them based on what we've seen so far and where I think maybe the story's going. Alright, so the jailer and Sylvanas are partners, right? They've been partners. She's been the project of the jailer. She's aligned with him. Why would Anduin come in and do this? Well, Anduin says, if you can get me to let go of hope, you finally can too. So Sylvanas can't fully kind of become this fully realized, you know, void-powered death bringer because her soul still has some humanity in it. You know, that's why Arthas failed too. It says somewhere in one cutscene or something that, you know, I think Jaina says to Uther's ghost or some shit like, you know, maybe it was Arthas's last shred of humanity left that kept him from destroying us. Same thing with Bolvar, right? Like, if you look at that opening cinematic from Shadowlands, dude, Bolvar is not even blue. He's like red. You know, he's got like Ionar's red fire. He's just having all the like the Scourge, they're just chilling. He's not trying to like kill anybody. He's too powerful because they still have humanity and hope left. And the same goes for Sylvanas, and they can't make that same mistake again. So, and that is the way that Anduin is a weapon. Like he says, you know, if she can convince Anduin that she's right, he says, like, then you'll know you're right. You know what I mean? And I think that's how he's a weapon to help her make that next step. And at the end, they're like, well, we got to expedite shit. So if he doesn't want to do that, just fucking kill him. You know, like, he represents hope. He called on light to the Maw, but it would be very strong if he was on our side. But if you just kill him, your last shred of hope, Sylvanas dies with him anyways, I think is the thinking. And that's how Anduin is a weapon. I don't think they're trying to make him the next Lich King. You know, like I said, they've been setting that up for Sylvanas, both I think in the story, and even if you look at the cinematics, like, they draw so many comparisons between Sylvanas and Arthas, and I think it's just a really cool, you know, the irony that she hates Arthas so much. He took everything from her, and she is stepping into his shoes, kind of almost literally, but, you know, from a narrative sense. But, you know, like, if she hates him so much, like, why is she doing this. And I think it's all Sylvanas wants to do is be dead. Like, she just wants to like not exist, right? You know, this is kind of stated in a lot of different ways. And I don't have all the examples in front of me, but you know, you can Google it or whatever. But she just wants to die. You know, Arthas killed her and she came back as a banshee. You know, she didn't want that. She hates Arthas for that. That's like the whole driving narrative of these games. And then she tried to kill herself, and nope, she gets brought back to serve somebody else. And I believe that the jailers basically told her, like, look, we need to kill Hope, we need to break the Shadowlands, and then I think there's one more part of the plan that I'll get to at the very end because it fits in better narratively there. But I think when they do what they say, she says, okay, now when you die, you're fucking dead. And when you live, there's no one pulling those strings either. It's all up to you what happens. Yeah, so we'll see if you agree with me on that. Also, Anduin's not going to die. I can almost guarantee Tyrande will come in and save him. And they're setting up more of a Tyrande-Sylvanas thing, in my opinion, than an Anduin-Sylvanas thing. You know, like, Anduin's not going to die, and I don't think Sylvanas is on a redemption arc, mainly because that would be fucking whack as hell. But I think more a salvation arc. Like, I think ultimately she'll get what she wants without having to destroy the world, of course. Maybe Tyrande will just kill her, and that will be the end of that. But we'll find out. So this whole video I've been referring to death as death and not the jailer necessarily, and I've been trying to do that on purpose, and if I didn't do it a couple times, it's because this video is taking way longer than I wanted to make, and I'm trying to just kind of go through these voiceovers in one take, so sorry if there's any continuity issues. But let's talk about who the jailer is, because, you know, here's what I think, and tell me if this is fucking crazy or if you agree. So what do we know? We know that, like, Denathrius is in line with the jailer, and I believe that Denathrius actually wrote this in Enemy Infiltration, and he wrote it to his, like, master. And if you read this, like, our most resplendent master, that's my Denathrius impression, but if you hear it in his voice, it sounds just like him. Now, I think I think prevailing theory right now is that a Dreadlord wrote that to Sire Denathrius, because it says you sired us in there, which, you know, I think is pretty on the nose. So I think this is actually Denathrius talking to his master. Read that last line there. It says, once a desire is understood, it can be exploited. You know, he's kind of gushing over how smart and strategic his master is. He's the most strategic person we know in the Shadowlands. I mean, the Primus, it's all people talk about. I mean, look at this Wowipedia or whatever WoWWiki article. It says right here that he is the most tactical and long-thinking of the Eternal Ones, a master strategist who's nearly unbeatable on the field of battle, and he's always thinking ahead of everyone else. Now, I've never read anything where it says Zolval is a fucking genius or the jailer is a fucking genius, but I read everything that says the Primus is a genius. And then when you look at this plan of, like, you know, the Dreadlords of million years ago and Sargeras and the Lich King, like, these are very forward-thinking, long-game plans, right? Like, I don't know why it would be anybody but the Primus behind these plans. Let's take a look at this shot. Here's the jailer all chained up. This is from the Shadowlands, you know, intro cinematic or something. But they tell you too throughout the game, like, you cannot trust what you see in the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands are not meant for mortal eyes. The maw is deceptive. And, you know, it's like I'm looking at this picture of the jailer, and now I'm looking at this picture of the rune carver, and it looks pretty similar to me. I haven't seen anyone else chained up in the maw, and you're like, well, you're saying, like, of course, dummy, it's because the fucking jailer escaped. I don't know. It just seems very, very coincidental to me. And when you think about this brilliant strategist, this genius, you know, what are we doing? We are the ones, you know, all these things are set in motion, and we're the ones setting this guy free. Like, it seems pretty smart. But I thought you said the Primus was the fucking jailer, not the rune carver. Well, I mean, I think another prevailing theory out there is that the rune carver is the Primus, and I'm saying that I think the rune carver is the Primus, and the Jailer is the Primus and the Rune Carver. Jailer, Primus, Rune Carver. Einhorn, Finkel, Finkel, Einhorn, etc. So, but, you know, it's confusing, but, and I don't exactly have it all figured out, but let's look at some evidence. Alright, so anybody who played Wrath should recognize this. This is the Pit of Sauron. You know, they're digging up this big-ass fucking skull like all the mindless Scourge people. Now, that skull looks like somebody I've seen before. Let's see if we can put a finger on it. Ah, yes, that looks just like the Primus. I mean, if people are gonna really universally almost agree that the Primus and the Rune Carver look alike, I think you got to agree that this head from the Pit of Sauron looks just like the Primus. And why is that important? Because there's one thing where whoever is in the helmet, allegedly the Jailer in the Helm of Domination, is talking to Bolvar, and he says, "You were supposed to be the herald of my coming, the harbinger of my coming. You were supposed to show people I was on my way." So of course, you know, these Scourge in the Pit of Sauron are working at the behest of the Lich King. So they would be pulling or making a skull, creating a skull out of Sauronite to the person who is in control, who is the master. Now that looks just like the Primus, right? I mean, it seems like too big of a coincidence to kind of overlook. And I think it's important to remember too that, like, you know, these forces aren't necessarily good or evil. It's all about perspective. And the Primus isn't like a good guy. He's still death, right? Like, he's still trying to tip the scales in the favor of death. And he has an army, and he's a master strategist. It's like, that makes a lot of sense to me. Also, I think all the skulls that have to do with, that represent like the Lich King, and here's Sylvanas, like her new little death garb getup, like that skull looks like the skull of the Primus. Like, if you look at Arthas Lich King, like his knee pads and shit have like a more rounded skull, but to me all these symbols of the Maw and death trying to take over, they're all kind of that same narrow skull, which to me represents the Primus. And I think this video of the Rune Carver memory with the Jailer, to me, might be a clue as well. Let's take a look. And while you're watching, remember what the Maw does. It kills your hope. It breaks you in half. It breaks you in two, literally. Like, look at what it did to Uther when he got stabbed with a weapon from the Maw. The Maw takes out your hope, and you go from a soul with hope to a dark manifestation, right? So picture this internal dialogue of the Rune Carver, and I think he's saying, I will not break, and he means it literally. He's not going to break into two separate beings. And then when you look how the Jailer pops in, it's almost like a Fight Club scenario.
Look at you, pathetic, a puppet dancing on strings.
I will not break. I will not break. I will not.
Fool, your mind is already broken. But even a broken thing can be made to serve.
So now the Jailer goes on and babbles a little bit more. It's about the secret the first one sought to keep. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe fucking Azeroth's hope. I don't know. But I don't want to speculate on that because I have no idea. And then he extracts, you know, the designs for the Helm of Domination and Frostmourne. And at one point he says, you know, you've made all these insidious designs for my army. And they really emphasize, the voice actors are great in these Warcraft videos, and he emphasizes the my, I think, to show like, we're not the same person. Like, this is me now, the Jailer, doing this shit. And I swear in like 2 minutes I'll get into how I think the Jailer and the Primus and how it all works. But first, before we like get there to the end of Shadowlands expansion, let's talk about what I think is going to happen in the next patch. Maybe the next patch or the one after that, because I really think that we will fight Draka, and she will be one of our main adversaries in the upcoming patches. I think the Winter Queen is fucking evil as hell too, and we're gonna take her out. But let's talk about Draka. Before I get into this, I gotta preface by saying, like, look, Blizzard is really good when they write at talking using what like CinemaSins would call the pronoun game, not being very vague. So like, there's a million different ways they could go with the story, right? So I want to recognize that before I say this. I'm like super certain about this, especially because the root of this theory is from an Il'gynoth quote. Yes, root, Il'gynoth, another pun. Boom, here we go.
The vassal of life disguises treachery. Beware the eyes of greed.
Million different theories on this, but look at this afterlives. Draka's eyes are brown in life and they're green in death. And I think, like, again, very subtle. These artists are so fucking good. Eyes of green, you know, they go from brown in life to green in death. Boom. And Draka is she's a ladder climber. Like, if you read, she went from like nothing to learning, and then she's a baroness of one house and then a baroness of another house, which wouldn't be suspicious or a big deal until when you consider like how she came to those positions, right? Like the former baron of one of the houses, Mograine, is locked up in the maw, and I think we'll go back to afterlives here. Now listen to Akarak when he says perhaps they weren't, and then watch how his kind of eye looks at Draka. Like, he doesn't trust her, in my opinion.
The House of Plagues lies in ruins. 1/5 of Maldraxxus wiped out.
It's hard to believe they could be so careless.
Perhaps they weren't.
Alright, so if you're saying that's a little flimsy, dude, like, beware the eyes of green, you know, and a little nod in the Afterlives thing, but if you look at, like, Afterlives Bastion, watch Davos's face, like, and she turned out to turn evil, right? And every little subtle nod is kind of showing her, you know, so much emotion, kind of so much foreshadowing. Beyond that, let's look at some other clues here. When you kill Stradama in Plaguefall, this is like the shittiest image, sorry, but she says, "Do not trust the Baron, ... So I'm guessing the Baroness. Now why would she say that? Because her house was destroyed in an explosion. Now, let's go back to Afterlives and see what else blew up in an explosion.
My brothers, I am on urgent business.
So 2 houses destroyed by explosions. Draka, not in either of them, keeps getting more and more responsibility as these houses fall. And I think too, and this is something I think I heard Akalon say, or something that stuck with me, is like, dude, this is the House of Eyes, right? Like the spies of Maldraxxus. So for someone to get in there and do that to them, it would have to be an inside job, right? Somebody who knew what they were doing and wasn't suspicious to them. And I'll also say this, you know, it's kind of a red herring alert, and I have to admit, you know, if I'm going to call these things, I don't want to be a hypocrite. So let's look at Afterlives again. And when you do notice the little henchmen she's meeting, they're staring almost up at the necropolis as if they're expecting an explosion, and Draka does seem genuinely surprised by it, but she's also a fucking master spy, which she's going to be obvious about it. Let's take a look. Either way, we'll never know because she killed all the witnesses, something you probably want to do if you're scheming and trying to get ahead. Just saying. So I think it's pretty plausible. If not Draka, you know, I think the other person could be Varsh, who's also a baroness who has green eyes now. But I think that would be stupid and boring, especially when you think of like how cool it would be for Thrall to meet his mom, but they're at odds because she wants to, you know, continue to gain power in Maldraxxus. And if not for being aligned with the jailer, I think if you look at this thing here, it says that on Draenor, the Frostwolf clan, like, they didn't want to dominate their environment. They wanted to live in harmony with it. And I think when you look at Maldraxxus, it's not like Ardenweald where there's trees and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's like, dude, even the fucking buildings are made out of bone, right? Like, so maybe she just wants to, if she's going to serve Maldraxxus, needs to make everyone else live the way they do without like as much anima and kind of living with what they got. Okay, so this is the last chapter of this video. If you still are with me here, thank you so much. I love talking about this shit. So okay, and I admit this one may be a bit of a stretch, but it brings everything together, I think. So I think that Xalatath is also a Titan, and she's the Titan of Fate. And before you say like, hey dummy, Xalatath is definitely like an old god void person. Well, here's the thing. I think she was the corrupted world soul that Sargeras killed. And when he killed her, since she was kind of a void being now, because she was corrupted, that she went to the void world instead of going back to, you know, wherever the fucking Titans go. So, you know, you have this being, Xalatath, who is a Titan, but void corrupted. Kind of not so dissimilar from Sylvana. So she has void power, but she still kind of has free will and those kinds of things. I think Xalatath, and if you look at these a million quotes she has, and she talks to priests, which I think is interesting, because I think, you know, she's a Titan, a being of light on some level, so she would kind of gravitate towards priests, and that's why I think she talks to shadow priests, because they're like, you know, the speakers, but to the shadow instead of the light. I just highlighted a few quotes here. You know, she says like, can't you see, like, don't you see what's going on? She sees a million steps ahead, and then she says, you know, another brute pretending to aid these elves, little did they know their fate. But she does. She knows their fate because she's the Titan of Fate. And I know it could easily be said, like, well, you know, all the void people see the future, like, that's what they do. True, but the thousand truths of the void, they don't know which one's right, you know, because they can't, because the light makes up half of the reality too. So the void can see 1,000 different paths, but not the true one. But she can. She knows like everything about everyone and how everything's going to unfold. And that's where I think the Primus, the Jailer, Death, the Rune Carver, whoever, all come into play here. So here's back to the WoW Wiki thing about the Primus. It said he once sought out an unknown ally who could show him intricate timeways and allow him to like watch battles a million times, and that's how he became such a master strategist and tactician. You know, he was able to go to this person and say, show me everything, show me what's going to happen, and they can. And I saw people in like some of the research I've done, you know, suspect maybe this is Nozdormu, the time dragon aspect, but it's like, why would a being of death like hook up with a being of light when they would, you know, they say in that enemy infiltration, the void welcomes us with open arms. I think they went to the void, went to Xalatath, you know, who could see the fate of everything, and he wanted to learn how to become the most successful tactician there is in order to kill hope, or maybe more accurately, in order to empower the realm of death. And when you have power like that, you don't want to let it go, you know, you don't want to give that up. So what do? I say you probably make a rune blade and you put that power in it. So you capture Xalatath in a sword and you have that power and it can't go anywhere. To me, again, makes a lot of sense. I mean, look at this picture. That's definitely a rune blade, and, you know, I don't know, I'm sure there are other people that make them, but damn, man, that's a powerful one. I think that's got Primus or Rune Carver or whoever written all over it. And I think maybe that was a kind of a little, let's say, tiff that the Void and the Realm of Death got into, which maybe led to the Void invading the Shadowlands, which we know happened in Bastion and Maldraxxus. They kind of took over, and there had to be an inciting incident there, I think. And maybe this was it. And I think somehow, you know, when that happened, that's when the Primus split into kind of the Jailer and the Arbiter. Because when you think of, like, in Bastion, like what's happening and all the people who are turning into the Dark Mossworn or whatever, the Forceworn, you know, it's because they don't want to do the ritual that takes all their memories and sad shit away from them. And I think kind of an eternity of the Primus, you know, when things started and he was the Arbiter and he was kind of dictating where souls should go, and I think all those decisions weighed on him. I think probably working with Xalatath corrupted him too a bit, and I think this dark side, all his despair, all the evil things, would manifest into the Jailer, into Zoval, into the you know, the hapless, hopeless souls, the keeper of that. and I think they did like a ritual on him. They realized like something had to change, and I think boom, they pulled out the part of him that is all the good and put it in the Arbiter, and then locked up everything bad in him in the construct that is the Zoval the jailer. And that's why he is the jailer and not the jailed. That's why he doesn't have a heart. He's all the things that, you know, the heart that they say in the light are against. And then he remained as the Primus, you know, in some way, like in his actual body, but minus these two things, he probably still had, you know, his mental faculties or whatever. And I think something like that happened. That's really how I think it goes on. And, you know, there's evidence of this similar stuff happening throughout the Shadowlands. They say in Maldraxxus, like, everybody gets a piece of the Primus. All Necrolords have a piece of the Primus. So this is like a precedent that's established that you can take pieces of yourself and give them out. I think the Court of Harvesters, too. Like, Denathrius made those people from himself. He even says to Renathal in one of the cutscenes, like, we should be one again. Like, he didn't like bang somebody and Renathal was their baby. Like, it's a part of him. And I think it's a similar thing. Like, I think that trickles down from really these other beings that we see in the Shadowlands are all part of the Primus, who was like the Primus. He was the first one. He was the first leader of the Shadowlands. And when this shit all went down, though, and they were like, dude, look, you're corrupted and we got to fix you, I think that's what happened. And I think that's kind of how he can be all these things at once. But now that the jailer is like running free, this construct is running free and is gaining power, you know, I think now the plan is kill Hope, right, Azeroth, and then go find Xal'atath and kill Fate. Because now we're talking about, you know, human beings during your life. You're not living your life and saying, oh my gosh, you know, there's hope, you know, I can do this and I can't wait. I'm going to, even though I know life is futile and we're all going to die, like, I'm still going to do things and I'm hopeful, you know, like, that's, your soul won't have that. You won't be stuck to the Veil. You won't be stuck in the Shadowlands. And by killing Fate as well, you, you know, you're not consigned to a predetermined destiny. These are things Sylvanas talks about in that Anduin cutscene. And I think, too, a lot of people in 8.3 were like, where the fuck did this come from? Who's Xal'atath? Who's N'Zoth? Like, old god out of nowhere? I think it's because they said, shit, man, we got this awesome Shadowlands thing. Here's how we want it to play out. And we need to get people refamiliarized with the old gods and bring Xal'atath in and get, you know, these show that she knows things and then have her escape. I mean, again, all this stuff, guys, is just speculation. I don't know. I'm just guessing based on what I see. And I apologize for the lack of images in the last half of this video. If you can't tell by my voice, I'm like fading. This is taking me so long, and it's like 3 in the morning. But I hope you enjoyed it, man. I hope you thought it was thought-provoking in some way. Let me know in the comments if you liked it. More importantly, what you think, what you agree with, what you don't. And again, this is just fun for me. I like the lore. If you disagree with something, please just don't be a dickhead about it. Let's just chat. And yeah, if you liked it too, feel free to leave a like and subscribe so I know that this lore content is cool with you guys. You know, I made a bunch of Torghast videos to start, and I have a bunch of M+ run-throughs for my Frost Mage with after buffs is pretty decent, so follow if you're into that stuff too. Yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and have fun in Shadowlands, and hope to hear from you. Peace.